In this video, we're going to look at the next component in our finding errors section, which is modal verbs and if conditionals. Now there are 9 modals: can, could, may, might, will, would, shall, should, must, and if you want to include ought to, that makes it 10. Now modals express a condition or a mood. They bring in the meaning of a possibility, permission, a strong advice, etc. What about if conditionals? Now if conditionals, there are 4. We have the 0 conditional, we have the first conditional, we have the second conditional, and we have the third conditional. Now we are going to understand the form in which these conditionals appear in a context. So let's apply this learning and learn to identify errors pertaining to modals and if conditionals through some example sentences.
For example, in that example, if ice melts, it becomes water. It talks about something that is true, something that is 100% true, right? On the other hand, let's move to our first conditional. Our first conditional it talks about possible future events. So that's your first conditional right there. If I see her, I will give her your message. So if you look at this, the form is pretty much simple. It takes up the present tense, see, and will, right? Simple present tense plus will. That's the form for your first conditional. What about the second conditional? The second conditional also talks about possible future events, but are not likely to happen, right? Most probably the condition will not be, very unlikely that the condition will be fulfilled. For example, I could say, so in this example, if I had more time, I would travel. It's very likely that the condition will happen, meaning to say, I don't know if I will get more time, but if I did, then I would travel. So it's very unlikely that the condition will be fulfilled. And if you look at the form, it's simple present tense, had, and then would, right? Now let's look at our last and final condition, which is the third conditional. Now the third conditional talks about things that are impossible, that are contrary to past facts, meaning to say that the action never happened in the past. So let's look at an example sentence for that. So that's your example for the third sentence. If I had known you were coming, I would have waited for you. So did this person know at all that you were coming? No. So the action never happened in the past. So it is impossible for the condition to be fulfilled because it refers to the past. 1. 2. The action never happened in the past. So it's contrary to past facts. And if you look at the form, it's had known, perfect tense, past perfect tense, and then you have would have plus the third tense of the verb, which is the past participle, right? Waited. Okay, so we have a fair idea of conditionals here. Now let's go back, having this basic knowledge of modal verbs and conditional. Let's look at our first example. So if you look at our first example, it says, if I had known this yesterday, I will have helped him. Now I understand what form this is, right? If I had known, we just saw the conditionals. Had known, which means it's past perfect tense, because know, knew, known. Know is the first form of the tense, knew is the past tense, and known is the past participle. So this form is definitely the third conditional, which means I need to have, not will have, but would have. So where is the change that I need to make? In 3. Option 3 is where the change has to be made. So I go ahead and make that change in option 3. I change will to would. Let's do that. So if I had known this yesterday, I would have helped him. Alright? Answer is in part 3. You change will have to would have because it has to be in line with the third condition, the form being past perfect tense. Okay, so let's move on to our next example. The student will not reach on time despite of the transport strike. So here again we're looking at the highlighted words which are will, and the next highlighted word which is despite. Okay, the student will not reach on time despite of the transport strike. Okay, so let's look at our options. I have can as, could because, may account, and should for. Okay, but what is the meaning that the context is trying to say? We have already a reason here, which is the transport strike. So let's look at our option 1. Option 1 talks about ability, right? Is this context talking about ability, or what is it talking about? The student can not reach on time as of the transport strike. Even if can, the first blank seems like it grammatically fits, as in the second blank does not logically fit. So we rule out option 1, we move to option 2. The student could not reach on time because of the transport strike. In this second option that we have, grammatically it sounds correct. Also it brings in the correct meaning. Now could as a modal brings in the meaning of possibility, right? It was impossible for him to reach on time because of the transport strike. Let's hold on to this, but let's also look at option 3 and option 4. Option 3 talks about may. May as a modal verb brings in the meaning of probability. The student may not reach on time because of the transport strike. It grammatically sounds right, but let's look at our second blank, account. Now if I have to use account in this context, the student may not reach on time. There is one preposition missing. Whenever I use account in this context as a reason, then I always say on account of. Now I don't have on after time, right? So I can't use option 3 even though the first blank seems logically right. Let's look at our fourth option. Should. Should as a modal brings in the meaning of something that is likely to happen, or also something that is the right thing to do. The student should not reach on time for of the transport strike is completely out of context, right? It does not bring in the meaning, nor does it logically fit and gives in the grammatic sense that we are looking here. So in this context, the answer would be option 2, which meets all the requirements of the meaning in the context and also grammatically as a fit, right? So let's go ahead and make that change for option 2. The student could not reach on time because of the transport strike. Okay, great. So the answer is option 2. Okay, let's look at our third example with respect to modals and if conditionals. If you are rule bound as you claim to be, you should stop at the signal. Okay, again, we're talking about which conditional do you think this is? Is it the first conditional, second conditional, third conditional? I know it's not first conditional because the form for first conditional is simple present plus will. But here I have a simple past. If you were rule bound as you claim to be, what is the form that I need for simple past? I need would, right? So if you were rule bound as you claim to be, you, which is the option that is giving me would be, and D, but which is the right fit? Is it if you were rule bound as you claim to be, you would have stopped at the signal? Or if you were rule bound as you claim to be, you would have been stopped at the signal? No. We know that the answer is option B, meeting the second conditional form, right? Simple present, you were, and I need would. Would have stopped. Okay, so if you were rule bound as you claim to be, you would have stopped at the signal. So let's go ahead and make that change. If you were rule bound as you claim to be, you would have stopped at the signal. Option B is the right answer. We've made that correction and it fits the second conditional form and rule.
Having gone through these examples, I'm positive that you've learned to identify errors pertaining to modals and if conditionals, and most importantly, know which if conditional is required in a context based on the meaning that it conveys. Let's move to our next component in finding errors.